So I figured I'd talk to you about something that I do in the winter, and I have a fat bike, and I was curious, as I spent too much money on this bike last year, I was curious to see the difference between the 2017 version and the 2018 version. This is a Salsa Mukluk from Salsa Cycles, and I figured I'd talk to you about fat bikes, fat biking, and some other shit. It's a very niche market, but when I'm not climbing, I like to cross train because I can't run. I cross train on a bike, so I have a 9er EMD, Eat My Dust, 9. Was it just? I think it's a 9er EMD, which is a custom build that I use for riding in the summer. But as winter is coming, I figured I'd talk to you about this, and this is a fun thing. But there's a few things we need to talk about when we talk about fat biking. So a couple of sexy frame shots, and we'll talk more about 5-inch, because this is 5-inch, no joke, 5-inch tired bikes. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it in the winter, and we'll talk about what's the difference between this and a normal bike, and what's changed on the Salsa line between 2017 and 2018. So enjoy the sexy shots for 5 seconds, and we'll be right back. There's long been a debate when it comes to bikes about wheel size. There's the people that love 26-inch wheels, there's the people like 27.5, and of course there's 29. I'm one of the outliers. I have two quite strange bikes. I have a road bike made by Da Vinci, which I don't ride too much because it's a great bike. I actually just sold one of my bikes because I wasn't using it. But I'm one of those weird outliers. This is a Salsa Mukluk. It's a carbon fibre bike. It was the Carbon GX1 from last year, or from this year, 2017. They've made a new one for 2018. And I have a 9er EMD, which is 29-inch wheels for when I go ride cross country. Neither of them are cheap toys, let's put it that way. But there's a reason why I bought a fat bike, and I bought a fat bike primarily because I'm in Canada, I'm in Montreal, and half the year is winter, so there's always snow on the ground. And when there's snow on the ground, there's people out riding slicks and whatever else, but I like to go cross country, go right up the mountain in Mont Royal to go get exercise. So I bought myself a fat bike. The difference between a normal bike and a fat bike is this thing runs 5-inch tires, and these can get dropped down to like super low PSI, so you get a nice big fat footprint on the bottom of the tire when you're riding, which gives you more grip, which allows you to go. It's a tool. Like everything I own generally is a tool, and this is a tool, and you look like a bit of a tool riding around on it. Actually, when you're riding around in urban conditions, you do look like a bit of a tool, but you're having more fun than everyone else because this is a monster truck. It turns every curve into a ramp. You can just jump around like a lunatic, and it's super fun. But let me talk about the difference between this. This is the 2017 in the brown and red, and the new bike, which will pop up here, which is around the same spec. This bike in a large frame weighs 29.7 pounds, even in carbon. This is a small frame because I'm a short ass. I'm only 5'6" or 5'7", and the standover height for me was actually more comfortable to buy a small frame. So it probably weighs around 26 pounds. You can have a single speed, which this is at the front, so a single derailleur at the front, or so a 1X, or you can have a 2X. I left it 1X, and I'm running 11 speeds on the back. It's got fully internal cables, so your cables don't get knackered in the snow, the mud, the grit, the crap, the sand that's all over Montreal. Has multiple bottle cages, and if you notice on the frame there's actually lugs on both sides of the front fork, which is carbon as well, for actually multiple bottle cages and for actually hauling around your thing, because this is actually more of a trekking bike than go around and ride on trails. I was trying to find a Salsa Bear Grease because it was neon orange, and orange is my favourite colour generally, but I couldn't find one in my size, so I couldn't get it. I was a little bit late in the season when I got it. And this thing's also got cable routing, internal cable routing for a dropper post if you're going a bit nuts and you want to go through. Carbon fork, which is takes down the weight. You're looking at North 45 Dillinger 5 tyres, and they're actually on a Surly rim, and Surly is another manufacturer of fat bikes who, you know, Salsa and Surly were pretty much the first people to actually make fat bikes. The bars are, we'll get into specifics, like the bars are Salsa Rustlers and they're 650 wide. Now normally I cut down my bars because I'm riding through traffic, but when you're actually hauling up a mountain and you're actually riding on snow, you actually want bars that are quite wide, so you've got a good leverage when you're actually out of the saddle and pedaling. The entire thing has a pretty good setup, and this is where there's a few differences, but this has the rear derailleur is a SRAM GX, the crank's a race face, the shifter's a SRAM, you know, the brakes are SRAM levels, which are pretty good brakes. It's got a WTB saddle on it, Cane Creek headset, and the wheels are like 32 hole. And the rims are actually called My Other Brother Daryl from Surly. They're not cheap. This thing, I think, ended up costing me about too much money, probably about £4 with taxes. But a fat bike is the most amazing fun to crash. It's not if you're going to crash on a fat bike, it's when you're going to crash and how you're going to crash. I've crashed hitting ice on a flat street and gone on my arse straight across the street. Like 2 minutes after I bought this thing, I crashed horribly and went sliding out, and there's some videos up here of me riding around up on Memorial. Now the difference between this bike and, which is the 2017 and 2018, if you want the difference, I've gone through the website and I made a few notes, and there's actually not much. The geometry is completely the same, the colours are different. That's it frame wise. It's pretty much the same frame. Nothing has changed through the sizes. The geometry is exactly the same. They haven't slackened off the head angle or anything. It's exactly the same, and it's a super comfortable, super fun bike to ride. They changed basically the entire drivetrain. Now is SRAM GX Eagle, whereas mine has some like more trick parts on it, like race face cranks and race face sprocket. They changed the sprocket. This is a 28 race face. On the 2018, it's gone to a 30 tooth. It's gone to a 30 tooth chainring. So they've put 2 extra teeth on it, which will give you a little bit more gearing, but not much. You could do that on the old bike. What else did they change? The new bike has a carbon fibre seat post, which is probably going to save you about 20 grams to keep the weight down. The big change that I can actually make out, apart from the group set changing massively, is the wheels are head big deals, and the tyres are changed from 0.45 to Maxxis Minion FBRs, and they're 4.8 inch now rather than actual 5-inch tyres, and the rims are actually tubeless ready, and I think the bolt through the brain fart. I think that they've actually changed the size on your quick release, the post. I think they've actually changed. Other than that, it's completely the same, and it's just colour. So if you can find a Salsa Mukluk and you're looking for a fat bike, specifically a carbon fat bike or a fat bike, because Salsa does make a bunch of fat bikes that aren't carbon fibre, that aren't much cheaper, and so do a bunch of other people. You know, I was looking for a Bear Grylls, couldn't get it, so I got a Mukluk. And I have an awful lot of fun riding around in the winter. And when you're riding and people see you and there's kids like, look, a bike that's a monster truck. I call it my monster truck because it is a monster truck. You drop the tyre pressure down, you haul up anything, fairly deep snow, fairly good hard pack, and you can just ride around like a lunatic with a big grin on your face. Now, one gripe is bikes these days don't come with pedals, which is a bit of a pain in the ass. So I bought a set of Blackspires, and the reason I got these pedals is one, because they match the frame, and two, because you can change the studs on them when the studs get worn out crashing into the ground or they're a little bit uncomfortable. There's a number of concessions you need to look at if you're going to be riding in the winter. One of them is get a balaclava, mine's a North 45. A good pair of gloves as well, because your hands are going to get cold. Everything else, you know, I just put on a pair of waterproof trousers and a waterproof top and I just ride and it's perfectly fine. The other thing is good footwear. Now, as I'm only going out for a couple of hours at a time, I've not invested in like the North 45 winter boots, which are up here. I invested in a pair of these. Vans winter sneakers. And these are a couple of years old, because I was riding my other bike in the winter. These are, they're not Gore-Tex, if I remember, but they've got Scotch Guard on them. The Scotch Guard, they've got the nice flat waffle grip on them, so they get on these pedals really well. Anything with actual spikes, they get on really well. All you have to do is get some Granger's waterproofer, even though they're waterproof, and just waterproof them so they're a little bit better, and a good pair of socks, and you can go out and ride for 2-3 hours without your feet getting cold, wet, and, you know, just making you feel miserable. It's not really much of a review, it's just more my thoughts. This one is actually more my thoughts on bikes. And if you're going to go out and buy and you're looking specifically for a Salsa carbon bike and you can find one of these in your size, buy it, because you've got pretty much the same bike as this year with better cranks for sure. I think that's actually a WTB comp saddle rather than just a standard comp saddle. You don't get a carbon fibre seat post, but really, who cares about a carbon fibre seat post when, you know, your bike is carbon? Well, if you want to go all carbon, then, you know, you want carbon handlebars as well, and a decent set of carbon handlebars at $650 are going to cost you about $200. Probably about $150, $175 for a carbon fibre seat post. And the weight gain, well, the weight loss isn't actually that much when you actually look at the comparative price to anything. You know, being a weight weenie if you're racking climbing, there's really not that much different. If you want to make this thing lighter and like you want to lose like a good couple, 2-3 pounds off of the front and rear of this bike, you change the rims to a set of these. Ping, here's their logo, Whiskey 9. Whiskey 9 makes some really great fat bike carbon rims. They're beautiful. You'll have to buy some hubs and lace them up and whatever else. But you're looking at, I'm going to say $1,000 because I've not researched this year because I was going to buy some. You're looking at this amount of money per wheel. So you're looking at something like $4,000 bike, and you're putting well, actually, Joe, if you're buying a $4,000 bike, you're generally not worried about spending another, you know, probably a couple of $1,000s on your rims to actually make it lighter. Now, one thing that's really interesting to note, and one thing that should be noted, especially with Salsa and their carbon fibre fat bikes, one is when you buy a bike of this standard, they do give you a card that's also an SD card, which is quite funny with the Salsa logo on it. And if you take this off of drops bigger than 20 inches, you're pretty much voiding your frame warranty. So what you've got to look at is when you're buying a fat bike from different manufacturers, because their warranties are fairly similar, is you want to look at what the frame warranty is. If you crack the frame, obviously stop riding, take it into your Salsa authorized dealer and get it checked, because a cracked frame is dangerous on any bike, but especially dangerous on a carbon fibre bike. So you go through, if it's cracked, go, but check. If you're going, you know, even on the Bear Grylls, which is made for fast cross-country nuttiness, the frame is voided after more than a 20-inch drop. So you have to be a little bit careful of that, and that's where you might want to go aluminum, and maybe go and look at what are your needs. I bought this because I'm going to go trekking with it. I can stick a big rack on the back, I can stick my tent in a cage on the front, I can stick, you know, stuff all over this bike. You know, there's even lugs up the top here, you know, stick a frame bag on it. There's a bottle cage here, a bottle cage here, there's lugs here, there's lugs here, there's lugs on the front of the frame, and then you can stick your pannier on the back. So you can actually load this thing up with a lot of weight and really go ride, and that's my plan this winter, is to go out and go trek with this bike a little bit, not too much, you know, a couple of day treks with some of my friends, and go out and ride in like some really horrible, serious winter conditions. And last year I took this thing out at -40. I was expecting the brakes to fade because of it being so cold, the fluid in the brake reservoir freezing. Didn't have a problem. The only real problem I do have is squealing brakes. My brakes squeal, like it sounds like someone's choking a monkey when I brake, and the rotors are wet, and that's purely just the way the rotors are, and the vibration through the frame just causes this squeal that is ridiculous. Other than that, Mukluk and Salsa is a really good company and a really good bike, and I have an awful lot of fun with it in the winter, because winter's there. Go out, have fun. You know, you can coop yourself up in the climbing gym or go to the gym or whatever, but if you can, go buy yourself a fat bike. There's cheaper options in this range, but please buy good shoes, buy a balaclava, and for God's sake, because it's winter and it's dark and it's a bit crappy outside, please buy decent lights so you can be seen and have them on all the time, because I don't want to hear horror stories about you said go fat biking. I'm like, yeah, winter's dark, get lights. I've got lights for this. I've got like 2 lights in the rear, 2 lights in the front normally when I'm riding it, and I have one on and I have one in the reserve, just because I don't want to get hit by a car when I'm riding. When I'm up on the trails, you know, I turn on my bigger lights, which I think are Blackburns. I turn on my bigger lights so I can see, because it's dark and it's pretty dusk, and I do go ride at night on the mountain. It's a lot of fun, and it's a good way to go out and explore in sandy conditions, you know, or really, really snowy winter conditions. But remember, it's not if you crash, it's when. And you are going to crash on one of these things, but you'll have a lot of fun doing it. Stay beautiful. Peace. If you can find the 2017, buy it, because it's a better spec than the 2018 in my mind. Peace.